Welcome, Brian. All right, I think we should go ahead and get going. We have a good number of folks. Welcome, everybody. New year, almost, actually. Yeah, next month. This is the first time in a long time that haven't just copied and pasted the agenda from the previous month. Got a new, so some items are carried over, but only a few now. So we've got a bit of a fresh start. First quick order of business, the first Friday of next month, January, would be January 2nd. Uh, my guess is that some folks will probably still want to be on PTO then and would prefer to wait a week before we actually have a meeting. Any thoughts on, I don't know, quick yay or nay? Would you prefer January 9th over January 2nd for the
Yay.
next yay? Yep.
Yes.
All right. That's three out of five TST members. I think that's the motion carries. All right, so we'll have January 9th, not January 2nd. Let's see. The TST elections have been held recently. There was the nomination period sent out to P4 announce and the schedule. And I believe we had three. So all TST positions currently are elected for a 2-year time. Each elections are held each year. For anybody who's vacating their seat, we had Harith Antry, Nate Foster, and Stefan Smolka's periods were ending this at the end of this year. We had exactly as many nominations as we have open positions. So Stefan, Billy Dong, and Shweta Srivastava from Intel were the nominees. And since we didn't have any need for an election, we skipped the election process, and the nominations are the new members. So welcome back, Stefan. Welcome, Billy Dong. He's, for folks, if anybody doesn't know, he's been instrumental in our Google Summer of Code efforts and lots of other things, but welcome, Billy. And Shweta, I've worked with before at Intel. I believe she may be, is she here yet? I don't know. Okay. Don't see her here today, but hopefully I'll get to talk to her soon and welcome her. Um, Thanks again to Harith Antry and Nate Foster for their service on the TST before. They've been very instrumental in helping us get to where we are. So glad we had their service, and glad I believe they are glad to have new blood come and join the TST. All right. Is there anything else on that I'm forgetting, Michelle?
There's one thing, Andy, this is Nate. I have been, for the first 2 years of under LF, the TST's governing board representative.
Yes.
So that position with me rotating off at the end of the month becomes vacant. And so the TST, maybe an executive session, will have to elect a new board representative.
Yes, thanks for the reminder, Nate. Yes, so I believe we have down here, I think
Scroll down.
Michelle
We'll,
had,
we'll also need to do the chief architect and the TST chair. Those are all 1-year positions based on what the group decided in January of 2025. So at the January TST meeting, we can do, again, kind of similar how we did this last year, where the last 15, 20 minutes are a closed session for the group to decide who can fill each of those roles.
yep, and I'll try to remember to send out a notice maybe a week or two before, calling for asking TST members who's willing to serve on each of those three roles: the chair, the governance board representative, and the software architect, and call for nominations so that hopefully we at least know who the nominations are by the time of our closed session. But if not, we can do nominations quickly then too, hopefully, and decide.
And there's another little meta issue, which I think is fine to discuss publicly. Um, so, I work for no P4 company. So as the TST rep to the board, hopefully I represented the technical interests of the community. I think it will be the case that all of the TST will also be employed by companies who have a board seat. Um, and so, which is fine. But I think hopefully, the spirit of the rep is that they're not they're they're taking off their company hat, if you like, and sort of putting on the TST and community hat in that role.
Thanks. And I think we also discussed with Michelle, it'd probably be better. We think it's probably okay if one TST member served two of those roles, perhaps, but probably we want at least two different people, if not three different people in those three different roles, ideally. Uh, yeah, the software architect, governance board representative, and in particular, I myself, uh, it would be redundant to for me to be the governance board position because as part of Cisco's membership, I am on the governance board for Cisco. So the governance board representative should ideally definitely be somebody other than me so that we have additional representation on the governance board. Okay. So that will be coming up by next month, those elections for those three roles on the TST. Let's see. Um, let me let me do some quick points of order first. Mario Baldi has been serving as the co-chair with me of the P4 Architecture Working Group since about 2020 now. He recently informed me that due to he's changed jobs from AMD to NVIDIA, and due to work changes and extra busyness there, he's stepping down as co-chair of the P4 Architecture Working Group. That the Architecture Working Group has been a little bit um, I'll just say like looking for things to work on that there's community interest on recently. The last, I don't know, half a year to a year, looking for focus that people will be interested in discussing and talking about. So if we want that group to continue, I think the ideal thing would be if we want to find another co-chair, it would ideally be somebody who wants to help set that direction and hopefully as well lead that direction. So if anybody has any ideas on that, feel free to send them to me or the TST in general, and we can talk about that. If you have any ideas about that right now, great. But if not, just think about it and let me know if you have any thoughts. But thanks to Mario Baldi, he's been definitely great to work with in that role while we were working on hashing out many things with portable NIC architecture is primarily what he and I worked on for the last several years. Let me think. Let me go to the ambassador program proposal. I believe the link here is put in here by Michelle. This, as a reminder, or if you're new, the basic proposal here is um, there has been a group in Japan, a user group in Japan for P4 that has held sometimes a workshop in some years and has kind of a loose affiliation collaboration with p4.org. Been getting we've gotten requests from other groups, particularly in India, that would like to have a similar kind of local user groups. And it'd be nice from p4.org's perspective, just for mainly legal niceties and trademark protection and legal obligation reasons. It'd be good to kind of formalize the role of a P4 user group. And so Michelle's written up this description of the P4 ambassador program, which would let people apply to become P4 ambassadors and define the roles that they have. This has been sent out to the TST. I believe two people have approved the vote. I still haven't done so myself, but I will get to that right after this meeting. And then if anybody on the TST has not looked this over, I encourage you to look it over. And if you approve, ideally send that approval to Michelle so that we can move forward on this and let the folks in India know what the terms will be for this relationship.
Mm,
Any
yeah.
questions or comments?
Andy, for this ambassador program, like as of now, we are focusing based upon the interest which is coming. Like Japan is one you are saying, and India would be second, right? Means or
Yep.
how it is, Andy?
So that is correct. I mean, your interest is the primary reason that the TST is that Michelle has written up this ambassador program document and that we're approving it. And we'll let you know the full contents of that. So basically, it's just trying to define, you know, your like an ambassador can't speak for p4.org. You can only speak for your organization, I think is the bare bones idea of uh, separation
Okay.
of like you can't use the trademark except in certain ways. There's trademark protection. Uh, but I think, I mean, we are definitely very interested in having folks promote P4 in other countries where we don't currently have good reach and very welcoming of that. We've just been a little bit slow at getting this ambassador program approved and getting back to you on that, but should be once we get the approval, we should get contact you very soon regarding sort of it's not a long document and
Okay.
it's not there's no like heavyweight list of rules and responsibility you need to follow. The mainly I think Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the main idea is, you can't use the trademark yourself and
Okay.
for pfar.org, and you can't speak for pfar.org, any kind of legal capacity. And then there might be one or two other main points, but except for that, if you want to use open source training materials, if you want to produce new training materials,
Mhm.
hold local events, user group meetings, I think that's all well and good, is my understanding.
Okay, yeah, because Andy, me and Sankalp, right, we are yeah, like almost ready with our community build-up exercise in India,
Great. Good.
and we do have a connect with Venkat and who is in the Quayside, right?
Mhm.
And so we are looking forward for the go ahead from Linux Foundation and P4 org, right? And hopefully the moment we'll get might be we'll roll out our first event in India, Andy. So yeah.
That'd be wonderful. And please do send announcements. I mean, you could send there's a P4 dash announce email list, and
Mhm.
that email list is moderated. Um,
Mhm.
so if you send a message there, it will go through a moderation process before it becomes public. But
Yeah.
if you want to publicize, your first meetings on P4 announce or other email lists, you're welcome to do that. Uh, Subject to all the, whatever the legal restrictions and rules are that are in the ambassador program. But I don't think
Right.
it'll be onerous. It'll mainly be, uh, it'll be clear when you see the document, but I don't think it's going to be difficult to satisfy at all.
Okay, but so I think as of now we will wait for the go ahead from the from Michelle and the Linux Foundation on the ambassador program terms
So,
and condition. Then we will
so,
roll
so
out.
yeah, yeah. So my understanding is, so I still haven't approved it and voted on it yet, but I believe that when I do that later today, I'll be the third approval out of five, and uh, I don't think we necessarily need unanimity on this. That might be enough, but it's good to at least get the 3 out of 5 voting approval before we send it to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Sorry, it's been slow. My fault.
No, no, it's okay.
Yep.
Thank
But
you.
glad you're interested. Very, very glad to have you, interested in working on this kind of things. Just, legally, there's these, little lines that we need to make sure aren't crossed. But the
No,
goal is
agree.
not
Yeah.
to keep you at arm's length. The goal is just to like say, don't speak for us, I think,
Yeah,
legally.
yeah, sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? All right. Feel free to bring it up later. Or I forgot to mention, if anybody wants to add agenda items that are not on this list, feel free to suggest them at any time. Otherwise, I'll go through these, but certainly not restricted to these. One thing that I believe either Michelle or, oh, I guess I'll do a quick side comment that's not in here, but Michelle, I assume it's okay to thank Denise for her all of her work for p4.org, and she's moving on to another role.
Yeah, so Denise was offered another opportunity, so she is no longer going to be handling marketing for P4, which is very sad for us, but we wish her nothing but the best and hope we'll still see her around occasionally. But in the meantime, any marketing or event inquiries, you can direct them towards me until we find a replacement for her.
And you're working on a possible candidate for that to submit to the governance board for their approval.
We're looking at, a couple different options. So,
yep, great. Yep, no, I'm very glad that she at least helped us through the last P4 workshop. She was very big presence there and helping things run smoothly, as well as in many previous years. All right. I believe we have some technical updates from the working groups scheduled. Stefan, is now a good time?
Yes, I'm happy to give an update. So I'm one of the co-chairs of the P4 API working group, where we work on mostly P4 runtime, but also discuss how to program P4 enabled switches in general. So I'll give a little update on that. Maybe let me start from some numbers. So over the last 12 months, we have 25 PRs merged, 37 issues closed. So sort of moderate activity. It kind of reflects that by now P4 API is very stable. For those of you who don't know, at Google, I work at Google, we use P4 runtime in production. And so a good number of the changes are driven from our side. What are some of the themes among those PRs and issues we closed? In terms of like new features, capabilities, the biggest one is around more flexible group programming. Right, so groups is this concept that I think goes back to OpenFlow, the idea that you have a table entry with not one action, but several actions, and then there's some mechanism by which the switch selects which of these several actions to actually use. And this is used for things like ECMP or WCMP, where you don't have a single forwarding path, but several forwarding paths, for example. And so what are the updates there? Generally adding making this more flexible. So we added support for things like packet spraying or dynamic load balancing. And if you are involved with building machine learning networks for machine learning, you would be very aware that those are the kind of techniques everyone is using for those networks. And this is indeed the driver for why these were added. So basically, what that allows you to do is to, instead of choosing an action based on a hash that you compute and then choosing the action deterministically, you can choose the action or the next port randomly, following some distribution, for example. That's what packet spraying is. Or there could even be a choice made locally by the switch based on information about neighboring links. And there's something like called DLB and GLB, global load balancing, where the switches even do a bit more work and know not just about their direct neighbors, but even further away. One added dimension is here. Previously, this was always based on hash, and now there's more control. You can let the switch make more choices. And also, this can be actually controlled now on a per group basis rather than just on a per table basis. And another little change in that direction is more flexible resource modes. So there's actually different ways that this kind of functionality can be mapped onto the hardware with different trade-offs. And now we can choose these different modes on a, again, per group basis. So that's just adding sort of more forwarding power into the P4M standard. That's kind of the biggest area in terms of big features. Some other areas, there's now more native support for experimenting with new features and new extensions and keeping them private before upstreaming them. That's been a common pain point in the past. So now that is sort of natively supported in your protobuf, and you can play around with new things before you propose them to the working group. Let's see. Obviously, there's sort of incremental fixes to the spec. The spec there's small bug fixes or improvements, making the language clearer, things like that. There's also been some effort in making the protos more easy to use for more ecosystems. We added support for Rust, for example, and new operating systems and new and updated build systems. So it becomes even easier for people to start using the protos. And that's pretty much it. There's a few things that we had worked on previously that kind of slowed down or that are still open and that we'd like to see more effort behind. So let me mention some of these. So previously, people had explored how would you have to change P for runtime for more high performance use cases, where you need to program maybe millions of entries in a second. So this would be, for example, in the NIC space. P for runtime is not super well suited for that. It was not optimized for that. And so there were some efforts in that direction, but they slowed down a bit. So that would be cool to see more action behind that again. Another direction was extending P for runtime to support not just very primitive values, like basically bit vectors and integers, but composite values like structs or even nested structs directly in P for runtime. And then one ongoing theme that that lacks a little bit of effort behind it, but that a lot of people want, but requires more work, is the ability to specify preferred string representations of a type. The prime example here would be something like an IP address. In P4 runtime or in P4, IP address is just a 32-bit bit vector. But certainly when you do something like debugging or you're using a CLI or a GUI, it would be really nice to print it as an IP address, right? And we do have solutions for that inside of Google, for example, and I think several others have their solutions, but there's nothing standard today. And so we'd really like to standardize that. Yeah, that's all I had from the P4 API working group. Happy to answer if there's any questions.
And I think, the API working group meetings, like all the other meetings, are on the same calendar that this meeting's on. And currently you meet once a month.
That's right. Once a month, every second Friday of each month. The first Friday of each month turns out to be commonly a holiday. And so it's the second Friday of each month.
Great. Thank you. I believe we have Jonathan DiLorenzo here today as well. Is now a good time for your
Sure. Great. I did not prepare any numbers as Stefan did. In hindsight, that sounds pretty cool. I'll have to find those after the fact. But we've had some very exciting work, I think, at least in the language design working group this year. So one thing we did relatively early is we now have people across enough time zones that there is not a single time that works well, really, for everyone, even close. So we've now split into two meetings. We have sort of a Europe-friendly time and an Asia-friendly time that we hold each every other year. Every other month. So that was an early change. This is particularly because we ended up getting a lot of relatively new engagement from KAIST in Korea, where they're working on P4 SpecTech. So that's one of the things that I've been most excited about this past year and the upcoming year. And so this is, if you're familiar with something like WebAssembly, they are now using this WebAssembly SpecTech version, but the key idea is very simple. If you can have a single formal specification from which you derive things like an interpreter, the actual user-readable specification, various tests, formal semantics. Those are probably the main ones, but Nate might be able to think of a couple of more. So that's been moving ahead pretty quickly through their effort. Recently, they added prototype prose generation in the language design working group notes. There's going to be some nice links to talks given by them and other stuff that we've done there. So that's worth it. As part of that, because they're now writing this very formal specification, we've discovered a bunch of bugs and ambiguities in both the spec and the P4 compiler. So much time has been spent deciding what are actually the right things to do about these ambiguities. Sometimes they were there because we didn't really know what the correct way to go was, rather than just because we hadn't thought about it. We've also added several quality of life constructs to the language. So there's a new slicing syntax. There's a new sort of simple, plus equals type assignment operators. There are now arrays of non-header types. Depending on how you count a year, we could plausibly count for loop addition as happening, admittedly, at the very end of last year. There's still some active discussion there, to which we'll need to get your input as well, Andy, as one of the drivers there. We are trying to decide whether right now, what we added to the spec is not necessarily bounded, which is a somewhat strange thing for P4, which otherwise has had pretty nice termination conditions. So currently, the sort of take is that can be defined on a target-specific basis, even though we don't really have any real hardware targets that we know of that support unbounded loops, because that would be a questionable design choice. But I guess we have been waffling a bit back and forth on whether this should instead be enforced as part of the spec in some way, like whether this should actually not be a target-specific behavior, but intrinsic to the P4 language. And this has recently come to life again now as the spec people are trying to formalize this part of the language. I think those are the biggest and most interesting changes this year, I would say. Andy, if you have anything else that comes to mind, please feel free to chime in too. Going forward, I guess I'm particularly excited about hopefully getting P4 SpecTech to be mature enough that we can eventually move to having that be kind of the official standard specification that we use. We'll try to bring it to you all before we unilaterally make that decision, obviously. And I guess there's also been a lot of excitement about having a sort of better first-class macro system in the language, but I would say not very much movement. No one is really leading it. It's kind of the main point, or at least no one who has any time to work on it.
Thanks. On the bounded loops thing, I guess the idea is, the question is, or at least one of the options before us would be defining a subset of like what the rules are for making sure that loops are bounded, because there's probably multiple options for like loops that are clearly easily checkable as bounded, clearly easily seen as unbounded, and then there might be this kind of fuzzy area where it's more and more expensive to check it statically. And so maybe defining a simple approach might be defining like these are obviously bounded. We'll start with that and maybe grow it later if it might be one approach.
That's right. And so this is one of the interesting design decisions, and also one of the reasons, as I recall, that we kind of punted on this, because if you decide that we definitely want them to be bounded, well, now there are a million design options that we can choose to make it so in some nice, clever way. Whereas if we don't make any decision, well, now we're good the way we are.
Sure.
So that's kind of a part of the pro and con. But I mean, yeah. I guess one obvious thing that we could do would be to not even have these 3 clause for loops, right? And only loop over a collection. And now, as long as all of our collections are finite, and they would be, it's very easy. Another thing that we discussed was if it is not even a part of the sort of deeper core language, but only kind of the surface language, which you could enforce by things like having loops always be unrolled in the front end, right? Well, now, by definition, if something compiles, it's bounded, and then it must sort of be bounded just by virtue of being a syntactic sugar.
Yep.
So that's kind of another way to go, though. It's also throwing the horse a little bit at the user rather than defining some nice construct to make it so it's very easy to write only bounded loops.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion for Jonathan? And I think you already mentioned that the schedule is alternate months for different times. So definitely keep an eye on the public calendar for the time of day, since it does change every other month.
That is right. And we do the first Monday of the month usually, but at the meeting before, I always check whether anyone has holidays or things they need us to schedule around, in which case we move it forward a week usually.
Great. One thing before I move on to the next one, just really quickly, I wanted to mention something that I think we have talked about before is there's been an ongoing search for one potential name for the role of P4 ecosystem lead would be either a part-time or a full-time role for that we're looking to hire someone. The current status is that the first round of interviews narrowed it down to 3 candidates. Those 3 candidates are in the process of being interviewed by governance board members, and we expect that approximately by next week or so that all those interview results will be collected, and the governance board may be able to make a decision on who to offer a position to. So hopefully that's coming up pretty soon. Probably no public announcements on that of any particular people until someone's accepted a role, is my guess. The next item I've got up here, I think Brian Richter is joining us today. Welcome,
Can
Brian.
you jump in real quick? I
Oh, yeah,
had slotted in a real quick line item because we talked about having the working groups. Sorry, if you slow down to them or scroll down a little bit. Having the working groups present updates to the TST on a semi-regular schedule. And I just wanted to bring that up to this group as to like what schedule makes sense so we can make sure everybody's aware and has time to plan for it, and we're adding it into the agenda. It's not this terribly onerous thing because we don't want it to be that, but we also do want to kind of recognize that part of the governance of the TST is to have technical oversight into what everyone's doing. And I think that it's been brought up before that there's a lot of overlap between the TST and the working groups, but there is also gaps in some areas. And so we're hoping this kind of helps close some of those gaps, as well as like maybe brings some new folks in from the community to engage in some of these areas that like Stefan and Jonathan, you brought up.
Yeah, maybe just to throw out a number there, but how about once a quarter? Is that something that people feel makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of either that or, once every other quarter, somewhere around there. One of those 2 periods seems reasonable.
Yeah, I
Is it
suspect
true?
that if we do once a quarter, at least for the P4API working group, it will be a short update. But like Michelle was kind of alluding to, that might also actually be an advantage. It makes it easier to give the
Yep.
update, right? So
Yeah,
personally, I don't mind it being
Yeah.
a little bit more often.
Okay.
sure.
I think that's pretty reasonable. Does everyone have, or are all of them monthly? I don't quite.
I
So
believe
would that be
all the ones that are being held monthly. Yeah,
okay?
the meetings
So
are
then
monthly.
there are right. Okay, so that's 3 meetings in between.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Four meetings.
Once
Yeah.
per quarter.
Yeah. Well,
I guess it depends on
3 meetings. Okay, fair
what
enough.
time of the week they fall on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
why don't we
Okay.
start with that, and then if
All right.
work, we can change it. But that's a great cadence, I think, to start with. And like I said, it doesn't have to be anything super formal, like how you folks gave your updates now, I think is perfect. I will ask you to help me. I had to step away for a second during some of your updates. So if you could fill in some of those areas that you wanted folks to work on, or we're kind of calling for some additional attention, feel free to add to the meeting minutes so we make sure we capture those. But I think that's starting quarterly works well and brings kind of additional technical content to this meeting's agenda, which we were looking for.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. Okay. Sorry, Andy, take it away back with Brian. I just want to make sure we
Thank
captured
you.
that.
Yeah, so I think Brian, welcome back.
Yes.
How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing all right. I mostly have one major topic, which is that the CI broke for P4C because the BMV2 package became unavailable. Its signature expired, and I'm not exactly sure what that system is like. It's Ubuntu in the domain name. So I guess it's some part of, I don't know how official it is with their packaging system. But I was able to build the package locally, and I found some problems, and I was able to fix those problems. And I put up a PR to Radostein's package, the P4Lang P4Lang packages repo. I was in contact with him, but I haven't heard from him in a few days. So I assume something's going on. But I assume he'll be around eventually. He'll have time for it. Hopefully that fixes it.
One thing we might want to ask Radostin is whether he's willing to let us transfer or fork or move that repo to P4Lang in the future. He might be willing to do that since he might be less actively involved in it these days.
That's definitely where I felt this was heading. Because that would make a lot of sense. There's a lot of steps for me involved there. Like I'm just not aware of what it takes to get into a position where you can upload things to a place with an official domain name like that, to the project. I'm not like a I don't know how that works. Like, how do you become a contributor to one of these package registries? But we don't necessarily. I don't know. I just don't know anything what we want to do there. For me, it's like it's less about the technical questions and more about the governance questions, like whose name do we put on these things, whose registries do we put them into, where's the official download location for these things, like when people want to add a registry to like apt, which registry are they adding? But in terms of the technical stuff, like so I got it working with the versions of P4 or P4C and BMV2 and PI that were already in that repo. But then I also bumped them to the latest version of everything, like the latest released P4C from earlier this month, and just the head commit of the other two, and they all built fine. So that I think that a few obvious next steps are to actually test these packages in some automated way, not just build them. I think that there's some tests running during the deb build, but then you have to test the packages themselves, I would think. Then automating it so that this happens regularly rather than when the signatures break. I was also looking at doing, and I think this is already an issue somewhere, or something that one of you had already mentioned, that just having the automated monthly releases of these other packages as with P4C. So I was looking at doing that to like BMV2, and then thinking of the other ones as well. So then, you could actually pulling tags for this stuff. But, the P4Lang packages, obviously Radostin knows what he's doing. It's like, it was something that I was starting to try looking at doing myself. And this is a massive step forward because he's already done it basically. So we can hopefully just use that. I mean, obviously we can use that. We just, work out to what degree, he wants to hand over things or just keep the lights on. Because I can always just put PRs to his repo as well, and set up CI there or something.
Certainly that's fine to start with. I suspect he might be on the tail end of his interest in P4 projects is my guess. And therefore, if you're willing to either transfer the ownership of his GitHub repo to us, or we can always, I suppose, just fork it probably and create a fork of it and use that forever. I don't know which is preferable. Any questions or comments for Brian on those things?
Not yet. That sounds like a good plan. I hope the background noise is gone, Michelle. I'm not sure what's going on. I think I have heating pipes next to me. Quick question on the actual, like the short-term fixes. So you pinged Radostin and he hasn't replied, or okay?
Yeah, I think I put the PR up a week ago, and I haven't heard from him in that week. Prior to that, he was around, so he's definitely around. I could try pinging him on, like, because I was also chatting with him on Slack, or at least sharing things with him on Slack.
But basically, once he improves and merge and uploads, this would fix our CI issues short term, right? Or is
Yeah,
there something
yeah,
else
I think
involved?
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, does somebody here have authorization to actually create a fork of his repo under P4 Lang? I haven't tried it before.
Yes.
I might. Do we want to just
I mean,
go for
it's
it?
an open source project, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to
I
just
mean,
go for it rather than worrying about without having to wait on him? As long as the
where do
license.
you upload it? That's the question. I mean, right now it's in
yeah,
a
it's
URL.
because it's exactly the CI is pulling from this Ubuntu
Oh,
registry.
I just meant the GitHub repo with his scripts for the moment, but then we could make commits to that under our own approval without having to wait on him. The other thing is, I think, if I remember correctly, for Debian packages or Ubuntu packages, you can kind of create your own, I forgot what it's called, PPA something.
PP.
You can
Yeah.
create your own private one without needing any account or anything like that. You just need to set up a proper server or something for downloading the files. Is that right? Is that something maybe we want to go with that approach rather than worrying about going through some official?
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to know the background of how, it's ended up that this person then Rodestein is, has obviously upload privileges somewhere, and then CI is using it from this particular distribution. It just sounds like it's classic, this is what we had at the time, so we went with it, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
um,
I would
I think it's
suggest
I think it's Radostin was just like very, very passionate and spent the time to do it, is my understanding.
yeah, exactly, precisely, open source at
It's
work.
Sorry.
open source, I think, the repo, right? It's some Debian repository. I think that's, yeah, we can make our own, but we still need to do it and set up the
Oh, it
keys and
is
put
open source.
signature. Yeah.
so. I would just suggest
Opensource.org, but then it's Ubuntu in the subdirectory.
Sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead, Nate.
I was just going to suggest I can try and get in touch with Rodostin. We've had some communication in the past, and perhaps they get things unstuck. I would suggest that we not like just do an end around
Unilaterally.
yet. Like give one
Exactly,
more
yeah,
chance, just as a courtesy, because I know there've been some issues communicating with him in the past, but I've always been able to get through. So I'd like to try, and then
Yeah,
if
that's
not,
actually my
yeah. So I'm willing to do that. Let's try that. We
Okay,
don't have to
great.
block for long periods of time, but we can give it, maybe.
Yeah.
The next month or something.
That's really what I was asking for, and I was just about to make the question explicit, and I almost forgot. But basically, whoever has contact with this guy, who knows him and has worked with him, just sort of figure out what's up. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I think there's no problem waiting a month or two for the fallback plans of just sort of making our own versions of where these things can be available in the future. If we can keep the current ones, that's fine too. Okay. Any other comments from anything other thing for you, Brian, or questions for Brian? Thank you for.
As far as from my side, that's just what I've worked on, and I haven't really looked at anything else besides that. So nothing comes to my mind for any.
I don't know about Fabian, but I'm nodding my head because that is like in my number one thing in my mind that would be wonderful to update. Cool.
Great.
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of changes to BMV2 over the last couple of years, but it would really be nice for regular P4C CI testing to use the latest version.
Yeah.
I'm almost glad the signatures broke just to force it. I had nothing to do with the signatures break. But it did seem kind of funny that this kind of thing happened right around this time. It had happened sometime, I guess. Okay. We can come back if anybody thinks of any questions for Brian later, but in the meantime, I don't know if it's Billy or David or someone else would like to talk about Google Summer of Code 2026 early planning.
So I think Davidis has been doing basically all the early planning work, so it would be good for him to give the updates. But before that, I just have maybe a small proposal. I think the current status is for GSOC, for each organization, there is a role of org admins, so-called org admins. Currently, it's Fabian, David, and me. So I guess probably for each year's GSOC, we can semi-officially just appoint someone as a main organizer, and we can rotate among the org admins. And I guess for this year, it could be David, but yeah, just a proposal up to discussion.
For me, okay, thank you for the proposal. Let's see if there is the consensus. Speaking about the GSOC 2026, so the first important information is that a few days ago we received the official email for the about the date on which uh, the open source organization can subscribe, and is going to be the 19th of January. The subscription is going to be open, and I think that the deadline is uh, beginning of February. And then besides that, together with Billy, Fabian, and also Anton, we rework a bit the can I say the policy to related to the Google Summer of Code for P4, which are the goals, what we expecting from the students, and things like that. Is everything is on working on the GitHub repository of Google Summer of Code. An important discussion that we have, and we didn't finalize it yet, is that we are looking to a way to automatize the generation of report in a way that they can be used as a blog post in p4.org, and we open a mailing, a discussion with Michelle to understand how can do that. So basically, the idea is, in order to do dissemination within and outside the P4 community, we want to do the same, the two meetings that we did in the past, the wrap up and the kickoff meeting, and also we want to make like blog posts like the report developed, I mean, written by the students. So more or less that's it. I don't know if you want to add something, Fabian or Billy.
No, nothing in particular. I think that's basically the summary currently what's going on.
I noticed in the email that they said that they would like. I'm going to paste the quote into the meeting notes. But like they are actively looking to bring in projects in the high demand areas of security and AI ML. So seems
Yeah.
like
So they had the
that's what they
same
said.
description for last year as well. So I think it's last year
Yeah.
they started using this phrasing, and the way I think it seems that we will try to phrase our projects as related to those. As I think it worked.
Yeah, it was cool to hear that Google is using the P4 specifically for like the ML workflows.
Although we do want to discourage participants from using LLMs to submit their proposals or comments on things. That's been an issue in the past, I think. We want
Yeah,
them
there
to
was
do
a lot of
something.
chat in the GSOC mailing lists about how like last year in particular there was a huge spike in
Sure. Yep.
slop.
Yep. It is something that people are being more sensitive about, and when they want human work, we demand human work, human thought. Great. Well, thanks for keeping up to date on that. I'd forgotten that the organization applications had to be in so early in the year, February. That it's been that way the past years, I guess, too. So glad you're keeping on top of that because that's 3 months before the GSOC actually starts. So all right. We have Shweta Srivastava is one of the new TST members. Shweta, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to the group?
Yes, hi. Thanks, Andy. And I apologize for joining late. I was in another meeting that ran way over. Well, I am a cloud software architect at Intel, and I have been working with the Intel IPU for the past 4 years, and have been working on offloading a lot of networking functionality using P4 to the Intel IPU, which includes ACLs, load balancing, routing, and all the key network functionalities. I also used these features to enable some of the use cases like Sonic Dash and a firewall use case that I'm working on currently to the Intel IPU. I am looking forward to bringing some of my experience here and also working with you all and contributing to the community as well. And I just want to mention that Andy was one of my first mentors on P4 when I started working on it at Intel some time back.
I
So
remember.
very excited and yeah, honored to be working with you, Andy, and everyone else here.
Great. Welcome, Shweta. Glad to have
Thank
you. Any other topics folks would like to mention now or questions for the group? Okay, well, in that case, thank you for joining and hope to see you next month. And keep P4ing. That should not be a verb. Thanks, everybody.
Have a happy
Bye.
Christmas or good holidays. Yeah.
Happy
See ya.
holidays. Yep.
Yeah, happy
Happy holidays. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.